I recreated this title using Adobe Illustrator. Here's how I made it. Created a line like this using stroke and then give it a value of 30. Another line with 25, and I started making the first letter with this. I duplicated, used the rotate tool to rotate like this, reflected it vertically and made a copy out of it. And I deleted this reference and I made a duplicate with that and converted them to outline. I merged it using unite function on Pathfinder, and then I used the rectangle to delete these upper and lower parts, and I used the divide function on Pathfinder to delete these, and then I brought the line and made a duplicate with holding Alt, another line, and I rotated it 90 degrees and converted it to an outline, and I merged it and I deleted the unnecessary points using delete anchor point tool. I started rounding the points using direct selection tool, and I followed the same process to create this letter and made an outline of this, and I merged it using unite function, and then I removed the extra points with delete anchor point tools, and then I started rounding this, and I brought the line once again and made a copy out of it, brought this point up, I started rotating it, outlined these two lines, I divided them using Pathfinder. Select both of these lines and made an outline of this, and select all of this and I divided it using the Pathfinder, and I ungrouped it, and I deleted the unnecessary edges, and I selected these points, used the scale function to reduce this width of this zone, and then I brought these two lines once again, and I just started rounding these points here just like this. That's the end of our letter U, and I brought these points up and then brought in a line like this, and then reduced its heights, and I used the A to create this P, and I selected this point, and then I started rotating it using rotation tool, and then I selected this, and then I rounded this, and I started rounding it. I made a rectangle to delete this point. I brought in A to create the letter C, moved the center line down, create a rectangle center of our letter, and I used minus front operation, and then I reduced the width, started rounding it, brought in A to create the H. I removed the upper part, I started assembling this, I increased the height of V, I kept this up as a backup, brought a duplicate out of it. For this upper part, I'm going to create a rectangle, and then I added two anchor points here, and then I brought these points here, and then I selected both of these and pressed yes for the scale tool, and then I removed the vertical height, and then I brought in duplicate again, and then I selected this point, and then I started rounding. I made a rounding on this point. I bring it here, unite function on Pathfinder. For the letter A, I followed the same process until I reached here, and then I added 4 points here, and then selected all of this, press yes, and then I only kept 100 for the horizontal value, and then I selected this and then increased the horizontal value by 140. I added this here, and then I used the reflect tool, added these 2 points, and then made a corner like this. Followed the same process which we did for letter A. For the letter Y, the operations would be simple. For letter R, and followed the same process which we did for letter M. I brought in C, and then I added these points, and then I brought this point out, and then I rounded this. I made this edge using the reflect tool, and then selected this and merged it. Same which we did for the letter M. I added 4 points on the upside, and then selected these points and increased the scaling by 130. And I assembled this, and I increased the height for the letter I and V. I decreased the vertical height for these points on the letter C, and I grouped this and I added warp effect. The style of warp is arc, and I given a value of 35. I brought in the line again, and then I brought this down, and then I brought this on the left side. I made a shape like this. Clicked Shift W for the width tool, increased the width at some points. At some points I reduced it to get a better contrast, and I used the smooth tool for adjusting this to get a better curve. Brought these lines once again, and I added a point like this, added few points to adjust this, some vertical and some horizontal, and I started rounding it, and then I brought these lines here and I brought it like this, and I selected this point to bring it like this. I removed unnecessary point using delete anchor point. Using rounding function, selected these lines to create another letter from this. I flipped it horizontal to create our next letter. Created a line like this, and I rounded this part, and I dissected this line into 2 parts using scissor tool, and then I deleted this using rectangle tool using minus function. Used the smooth tool to adjust this edge. I brought in same lines and I made a line out of it. I made a duplicate and brought in like this. I started adjusting the height and width, and then I started rounding these parts. I made a shape like this. I started rounding this part. I used the width tool to reduce the width and height. Smooth tool to smoothen this to get a better curve. Brought in like this. I reduced the width and height just a little bit. Rounded our previous letter. Brought these points down just to get a better look. I brought the first letter down and I merged it using unite function and selected these points and adjusted it and edit some of it with delete anchor point tool. Selected this corner point, gone into corner, change this method into this inverted round and increased the radius something around 10, and for this point chosen the same method and increased the corner by something around 20, and I started assembling it. Added few more points to adjust this kind of a sharp edge to get a sharp edge like this. I attached this part and then I made few corners and added few more points to adjust this kind of a sharp edge, and I used the reflect tool here. I adjusted this edge using direct selection tool. I tried to straighten this thing. I added few more points here and then I adjusted this corners using round function. Then I added few more points this side, a corner here, and I adjust this roundness just a little bit, and I added few more points here. I tried adjusting this and I made a rounding here. I used the same method and I selected this corner and bring it down and made an edge here. Location icon. Let's create a circle and duplicate it and make it smaller, and press C for the scissor tool, and then select these points to dissect this circle into 2 semicircles, and then use pen tool to join these points. Select this circle and send it to back. Select this top circle and create an anchor point at the center, and then bring it down and select both of these and increase the corners, and then select this point and increase the corner for this one and send it to back, and select both of these shapes and make minus front operation on the pathfinder to make this kind of a icon. And I grouped this and I added arc warp and given the value of 35. I started adjusting this letter to get a better curve. I selected this separately using lasso tool. I started adjusting these points separately to get a better curve. I smoothen this using the smooth tool. Adjustments here and there. We are done with the design. That's the end of our video. If you are interested, check this video for the full process of making this design. Thank you for watching.